Welcome to the Flying Octopus Podcast, offering a new perspective on Red Wings hockey, as well as all the important news from around the NHL. And now, here are your hosts, Tony Wolak, Devin Little, and Evan Sabrin.
So, I'm curious, when was the last time you guys did a road trip?
That was about 2006. I remember my friend Michelle and I had to take this homeless drifter who was he was squatting in this apartment off of M59 near the Pontiac Airport, and he needed to absolutely bust his ass down to Cincinnati to meet his sister because he needed somewhere to live. And we took her minivan and we took I-75 down through the worst skanky parts of Ohio, and we got our asses down there pretty quickly. There were the usual stops for gasoline and snacks and stuff, but I think he brought his mattress and some general stuff that were just, the essentials with him. And we got there in the evening. We met his sister, and we all went for ice cream together because there was this ice cream shop that was open late right near the baseball stadium, and that was our little road trip together. It was lovely.
Earlier this summer, I took a drive through kind of the Appalachian areas. Went through Ohio into Pennsylvania, down through West Virginia. Really cool. Just kind of we're going up, and the fog, how it was settling on the hills. It was my one regret with that trip is that I was driving, so I couldn't take pictures. As for snacks, I'm a sweet and salty guy. Actually salty and sour, I guess, because you'll find me with some combos and some Sour Patch Kids. That's what I'm munching on while I'm going through my drives. And drinks depends on if it's super early. I will down an energy drink if I have to, if it's super early. But anybody who knows me knows what I'm going to say. If it's afternoon, it's always a Dr. Pepper. Always a Dr. Pepper.
That's true. It is always a Dr. Pepper with you.
I'm all about the combos, man. I'm all about the combos.
Combos are the road trip food. Yeah.
Absolutely.
They look like dog treats, but damn, I'm addicted.
They don't taste like it.
Kind of do. For me, it was, pre-COVID, pre-kid, last long road trip. We were living near DC at the time, so we drove from there down to my in-laws in Florida, over by like Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach area. I think we must have left the house at like 4:30 or something wild like that. But drove through the morning all day. It was a whole 14-hour excursion. Our dog in the back seat, full-size husky, did not like it, but he was happy once we got there. For food, I don't know. It's like I'm trying to be strategic while I'm driving, the least stops possible. So I'm not chugging energy drinks or whatever. Even first thing in the morning, I'm like, all right, I'll try to make it an hour before I crack open the Celsius, or I'll wait to have my Cliff Bar or whatever. But you got to keep on going if it's going to be a 12+ hour trip.
Well, I think every day is a road trip for me living in Los Angeles, and the 405 freeway, which if you guys don't know is the busiest freeway in the world, actually. And it can take you anywhere from a half hour to an hour to go 3 miles at points. So everyone always has to leave work early, and that's just one of the bad things about living in California. On that note, welcome to episode 11 of the Flying Octopus Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Sabrin, joined by my cohorts, Devin Little, Tony Wolak, and George Malik. And the reason we're doing on this road trip talk is because, the Red Wings are actually coming out my way on a road trip with games against Anaheim on Friday and the Kings on Saturday. I, unfortunately, will not be able to get down there in time just because of what I just told you with the 405 freeway, and that sucks for me. But guys, looking ahead to this road trip, we got LA on Saturday. They play LA on Saturday. What have you liked and not liked from this past week's game? And what do you want to see during the rest of this road trip that the Red Wings are going on? And let me add, too, that they will be playing San Jose on Monday. Tony, I'm going to start with you.
So, Yeah, I said going into the Pittsburgh game for this, 4-game road trip that 6 points should be the goal. They got 2 so far against Pittsburgh. It was great to see them finish it off in overtime. Thank you, Simon Edvinsson. That was a pretty nice goal to watch. But the rest of the trip, get at least 4 more points. Then I'll call the trip a win. One thing that you want to see, though, is that the Red Wings should be beating inferior teams. Like, that should be the norm, right? They beat Pittsburgh, who's below them on the standings, and they got Anaheim and San Jose, who are frankly lottery contenders. So they need wins now, since the season didn't start off super amazing. But we'll get more to that later. On a more in-game and player basis, I'd love to see Alex Lyon get the Anaheim game to get back in there, and then let Talbot start on Saturday against his old team in Los Angeles. Another player I'm planning to watch is Jonathan Berggren. I thought he had his best game of the season against Pittsburgh, and obviously he scored, and that was great. But he was generating so many chances. He got a lot of great looks. Like, he had been snake bitten. I think, George, you suggested that he visit like a witch doctor or something in between periods. And I mean, he scored after that, so maybe he did. But the thing is, it was just like, it was bad luck and just being snake bitten. Like I said, the shots on goal per game, per 60, were up compared to his rookie year when he played like 60 some games with the Red Wings. Shot attempts are up, shots are up, high danger chances per 60 are all up. Just they haven't gone in. And one other thing I noticed was that this year, compared to previous years, the Red Wings are giving their first power play unit a little bit more time compared to their second power play unit, which makes sense. But in the past, it had been like a 50-50 or 60-40 split. This year, it's more like 75 and 25. So, like, for a standard power play, the first power play unit is getting the first minute 30. Puck gets dumped. They change. Then you have Berggren in power play 2 rushing the puck up ice with 30 seconds left on the power play to try to generate something. So you're obviously not going to get a ton of looks when the clock's ticking. But hopefully this should springboard Berggren to have a good next few games and sort of build up his confidence and start to be the player that we were all expecting him to be heading into this season. As for the team as a whole, I thought they've been better defensively in the last couple games, like dating back to the Toronto game and I guess Chicago before that. There were some breakdowns against the Rangers for sure, but generally sound against Pittsburgh. So when you're playing Anaheim, Los Angeles, and San Jose, I just really want to see a strong defensive effort to make sure they get those wins.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of your point about the defense there, I think that we're maybe seeing the limitations of the talent pool that the Red Wings have on the blue line. Because when you think about this season as a whole, think about where they've looked good, think about where they've looked bad. They tend to look pretty good against the teams they should beat. And it's because they have an adequate defense. They have, I would say, an average defense. But when they've looked bad, it's when they're playing against the higher end teams. And I think that to kind of harp on the point about talent pool, we talked about it last episode, right? Edvinsson and Seider look fantastic together. They're doing a lot of good things. And you almost wish that you could clone them, because then there'd always be one of them or both of them on the ice. But as it is, and while they have looked, and while the rest of the defense has looked fine, kind of throughout the time here as we've been going along, there are times where they leave things to be desired. And I think that as we progress into the season, it's how much they can continue to look adequate versus how much they look less than adequate that will probably determine how their season goes. And speaking of defense, and speaking of that Edvinsson and Seider pairing, it was really nice to watch Edvinsson score that game-winning goal against Pittsburgh the other night. because it just kind of is the exclamation point on what Edvinson's been doing this season, right? Again, we talked about it last episode. He's really brought together that pairing with Cider, and Edvinson's one of those guys that, as the season's progressing, I think you're seeing him look more and more confident, more and more eager to jump up in the play and make plays, and he's playing a man's game now, and I think that's why he spent so much time in Grand Rapids. He's trending in the right direction. That's all you can ask. And I think that you just kind of want to see that momentum carry and build on this road trip. And then final point from me, it was also nice to see in that Pittsburgh game, Patrick Kane bury one. I think he kind of in the same category as Berggren, where Kane's been getting his chances. I don't remember which game it was exactly, but there was, I think he had like 3 crossbars, 3 posts. And he's always getting opportunities too, because he's Patrick Kane, right? But in trouble burying all the chances he's had, and he's had some good ones. But then I kind of had to shake my head a little bit, because then I looked at his stat totals going into this, and he's actually shooting 10%, which isn't like crazy, but it's also not like horrible. I guess the thing to take away from that is he's doing the things that eventually lead to results. And it wasn't that long ago that we were really worried that Patrick Kane wasn't Patrick Kane anymore, and finding ways to do things. So that's good.
Looking back at the Pittsburgh game specifically, I thought that the Red Wings didn't necessarily match the desperation that Pittsburgh had, especially for the whole 60 minutes of the game. But obviously Talbot was excellent. The Wings won the special teams battle. Their power play went 1 for 2. The penalty kill was 2 for 2. We talked about Edvinsson scoring that gorgeous overtime goal. And, when you're getting the secondary scoring and if you will, the tertiary scoring, when you get goals from Kane, Berggren, Edvinsson, that's what you want to see. I wanted to talk about sort of the learning process when Cider got walked around by Rust on the 2-1 goal. I thought that was sort of a moment to pause and go, it's surprising sometimes to watch it and watch him be human, but for both, even for Edvinsson and Cider, we're going to be watching these learning moments happen from time to time, and learning moments usually end up in the back of your goal. It sucks, but it's just the truth. I don't know. Defense for me is good and bad. Obviously the personnel limitations, I completely agree. You have the Cider and Edvinsson pairing, and then you have the rest of them. Even when you're talking about bringing Albert Johansson into the lineup and getting at least a fresh face in there. I look at the structural stuff when they're trying to bear down and battle for pucks, with a lot of will and some determination to it. Pardon the tragically hip quote there. But when you get your sticks and your skates in the passing lanes, they're fronting the opponents on the penalty kill. They're competent, and I think that sometimes that's all you can hope for is competent. And when they're not given 100%, there are quite a few people who can get walked around and shot and passed through, that sort of thing. And we saw that against the Rangers, where they were pylons, and the Leaf game was. It was in there. It was competitive, but it wasn't exactly elegant. And the Rangers games were just absolutely just disasters. All three of those games were just horrible. Looking forward, obviously, for me, you want to see respect, because I understand that Anaheim and San Jose are lottery teams, but at the same time, you don't want to play them like they're lottery teams. To me, it's really important that you give them the kind of respect that the Red Wings gave the Penguins, and you understand that that you're still going to be facing a team that sees you as a challenge. So That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for in the next couple of games. And along those lines, I wanted to talk about sort of the season starts and the season finishes throughout the league, because we're 15 games in, and the Red Wings are a 500 team. They're 7-1. If you look sort of around the league, the Jets, have shown us that you can definitely win a playoff spot in the first quarter of the season if you're, absolutely on fire. Whereas the Predators are showing us that you can make your season incredibly difficult in terms of trying to put pressure on, putting in that second half comeback, or bust when you screw up those first 15 or 20 games. But you look at the Atlantic Division as a whole compared to the Red Wings, and people are sort of getting their shit together, if you'll pardon the phrase. And the Red Wings are watching teams like Ottawa and Buffalo sort of separate themselves from Montreal at the back of the pack. And as you want to watch the Wings sort of pounce on the Pacific Division's middle and possibly try to get one in LA, it's, how do I want to put it? There's this mushy middle. People like to talk about the mushy middle that the Red Wings are trapped in. And if you want to see the Red Wings separate themselves from that quote unquote mushy middle and at least place themselves in a trajectory to compete for a wild card spot, a playoff spot of some kind, you wonder whether they have what it takes to continue to gel as a team, to find their identity, and to just play better on a game per game basis. Because right now it's getting to the point where the first quarter of the season is more or less done, and you really got to get your shit together as a team in general.
Yeah, you do bring up a good point, and I do, for what it's worth, think that they have what it takes. I mean, they have shown, despite where they stand in the league, they've shown that they can compete. They have shown that they can win games that they're supposed to win. I think what will ultimately tell me that they're ready to compete for the playoff spot that they're supposed to be competing for this season is if they can start stealing wins against teams that maybe they're not supposed to beat. As we talk about those games against the Rangers, and I think we can all agree, you blindly go into a game against the Rangers and with the Red Wings and the Rangers, and you'd say the Rangers are going to win this game. More often than not, the Rangers are going to win the game. They're the better team. But the thing about sports, think about hockey, is that there's a reason why you play the games. I think that the Red Wings, I guess, to kind of reiterate the point, once they can start stealing wins, I think they're on the right path, and I think they have what it takes to start stealing wins because they're at 500, and there's still very obvious points where they can get better. I think that they're not controlling the play enough still, and I don't know how they will fix this. I don't know if it's going to be just a simple schematic thing where all of a sudden they can start turning the tide. I don't know if it's a momentum thing, but I think that it is plausible that they reach that point of gelling, that they can start possessing the puck, start controlling play, start just winning games kind of seemingly at will, like they were last season, when they went on those winning streaks that made all of us think they were going to be a playoff team. I think that ultimately what they need to do is kind of really take stock of what has worked for them this season, take stock of what has not worked, and then they need to make those adjustments. And then if those adjustments don't lead to success, then it's time to make adjustments elsewhere. And maybe we can talk about what those adjustments would look like later. But for the sake of where they stand in the mushy middle, in purgatory, as I like to refer to it, they're going to be there, and I think that it's fine for them to be there because that's kind of where we expected them to be. But for them to push beyond it, where everyone wants them to go, they got to start stealing wins.
It's pretty wild too. Just like as George was saying, how much the first 15 games or so can make or break your season. Like, yeah, the Red Wings are in the mushy middle, but like for the Predators per se, it would be an absolute miracle if they somehow made the playoffs after starting off as slowly as they did. And then the Jets, they've been crushing it. It's like if they play 500 hockey from here on out, they're probably in the playoffs. Don't check my math on that. I didn't do math on that, but it sounds right.
Oh, there would be no math today.
Well, we're about to get some numbers here, but if you look at the Red Wings this season, like obviously offense has been the offense and the penalty kill the main things to harp on so far, right? Goals for down year over year. Same with shot attempts, expected goals for, high danger chances are all slightly down. And it's not that just they're down year over year. It's that they were already not so great to start with. Well, they scored a lot of goals last year, but like the underlying metrics of like expected goals, high danger chances, shot attempts, like these are at the bottom of the league. It's Thursday now as we're recording right now, according to Natural Stat Trick. Detroit's high danger chances per 60, which is 8.54. And this is at 5-on-5. That is the worst in the league. Their shot attempts for at per 60 at 5-on-5 is 52.35. And that's the worst in the league. So like, it's not that the offense is just a little down compared to last season. It's that it is down, but it's also like some of the worst in the league. And that really needs to change if they're going to win games consistently. I'm sure that, like, difficult schedule off the bat. The flu bug went around. Like at some point, you need to just kind of move forward and execute. And hopefully we'll start to see that more over the next month or so. At the very least, their defense has been better this season, even if beyond Edvinsson and Sider, it's just kind of a collection of French third pairing defensemen, more or less. Their goal and their goalies too have been outstanding. Goals against per game is at three even right now. That's 12th best in the league. Their defensive metrics as well are like they're sort of middle of the pack. Like expected goals for per 60, middle of the pack. Their high danger chances against per 60 is 9.47 at 9.74 at 5-on-5. And that's 10th in the league, 10th best in the league. So like they're improving defensively. That's great to see. And maybe we're seeing a little bit of a trade-off and less offense equals more defense, and it was vice versa last year. But it begs the question, like, what's next? You hope for continued progress on defense and then progress on offense and the penalty kill to get a little better. But if things don't really change and you kind of stay at this level, like, should the Red Wings consider a change? Like I put out an article earlier this week about, and this was before the Pittsburgh game, but after the Red Wings got outscored 7-1 against the Leafs and the Rangers over the weekend, like that to me was like, all right, I've kind of had enough with the moral victories. Like the rebuild continues. We're seeing a lot of rookies and young players in the lineup, and that's great and all. But like at some point, you got to win. You can't just stay in this mushy middle purgatory forever. So I just suggested, like, maybe it's time to ask the tough questions. Maybe you ask if Derek Lalonde is still the right coach for the Red Wings. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But like, you need to ask those questions and just can't go forward saying, yeah, it'll be fine. Things will work out. Or the model said that they were right where they're supposed to be. But it's if you ask a team what they're trying to do during the season, they're not going to say, well, the model said we're going to be a bottom 10 team in the league. So as long as we're doing that, we're fine. No, you're going to try to make the playoffs. You're going to try to win regardless of who's on your roster and what everyone else is saying. Like everyone on the team has pride to win, has pride to make the playoffs, has pride to push for the Stanley Cup, regardless of where you're starting. So at some point, yeah, the mushy middle does need to change. But yeah, it's I don't know. It might be time to, if the Red Wings continue to kind of stay at this pace and we hit a losing streak at some point, maybe you ask those questions.
I think that's fair. I think that definitely as they proceed towards the 25-26 game mark here, and then toward the halfway point of the season, they play a lot of games for the balance of November and into December. You have to ask those questions because, like you said, if you've ever been to an NHL training camp and talked to players, I mean, even the San Jose Sharks, they're not coming in thinking we're going to be a lottery team. Realistically speaking, the players come in with a lot of pride, with a lot of belief and resolve that they are going to be a playoff team, or at least they're going to give it the old college try. You have to understand that these are professional athletes. They're incredibly competitive human beings, and they're going to want to compete. And the question for me, and maybe for you, is who do they want to compete for? Who is going to be the best person for whom to mold the team into a better competitive machine? And is that Lalonde, or are we talking about somebody else? And no, it won't be Joel Quenneville. Please stop. Anyway, I'll let you guys get back to it.
I think I want to address kind of the elephant in the room, and while I'm sure none of us are actually worried about his play on the ice, but Lucas Raymond, had the big contract this summer, and 1 goal through 15 games, that puts him on pace for about 5 goals for the season. He has been great though as a playmaker. He does lead the team with 14 assists. But it's a little concerning to not see him get the puck in the net, which is, he's supposed to be our leading goal scorer. I think I'm not worried about it, but I think he's going to eventually turn it up, and that will really help the offense generate more scoring, because right now he's been snake bitten.
Well, it's time to worry about worrying about it, at least. I'm not concerned that he's not going to be able to snap back at some point, but for a guy who's confident enough to not have a stick deal, and for the record, this is like players, everybody has a stick deal, everybody has a glove deal, everybody has a helmet deal. He's kind of a free agent looking for somebody to get him a nice bag of golf clubs. He just doesn't seem to have that confidence in his shot, and given how, we knew that there was going to be quote unquote regression in his shot percentage after last year, but to see him struggle as much as he has to just put the puck home, yeah, that is a question for me.
Yeah, if you would have told me at this point in the season that Andrew Kopp would have 5 times as many goals as Lucas Raymond, I would not have believed you. I think that you do bring up a good point though, Evan. There is some positive regression that we can probably expect for this team, because guys like Raymond he's not going to finish the season with 5 goals. I'm not saying he's going to finish the season, but he's good. They're going to start going in, and there's a few other guys on the team. I mean, even Tarasenko at 2 goals, 4 points. I think he's bound to hit a stride at some point. You look through up and down the stat list, there's a lot of things that where you go, there's no way that holds up. Maybe it will, and I'll look stupid, but just some of these things don't look sustainable. And then just real quick on the topic of coaches, I do just personally really get the sense that this is one of those situations. This team is one of those situations where maybe they need somebody with a lot of experience behind the bench. They need a voice of wisdom behind that bench that has been there and done that. And George, you brought up a good point that they need to decide who they're going to play for. And I think that maybe lends itself to the idea that they need to have somebody behind the bench with experience getting NHL players to play for them. Maybe this is Derek Lalonde's moment to rise to the occasion and really show that he is the guy. But I also think that there's some really qualified coaches out there that are free agents that I think would be a really good fit for this team, and have experience dealing with the things that this team is dealing with. At the end of the day, that's kind of where what I was getting at when I said they need to make the adjustments that they need, that present themselves, that obviously need to be made. If they tinker with this, they tinker with that, everything looks good, but they still, like you said, Tony, can't break through and kind of into the next tier of teams. That's probably on coaching, and that's a sign that you need to make an adjustment there.
Yeah, and let's hope this this California road trip does spark the Red Wings, and if not, and maybe Todd McClellan still does live in Los Angeles. And yeah. But anyway, shifting gears, the Spit and Chicklets podcast had Roberto Luongo on earlier this week. And I say this because when Luongo was talking about getting dealt to Vancouver, he had was up for a new contract, restricted free agent, and just casually mentioned that, oh yeah, the Red Wings offer sheeted me. This was prior to the 2006-2007 season. And this was the summer where Steve Yzerman retired. Brendan Shanahan moved on to the Rangers. Big transition year for the Red Wings. So that was kind of a surprise to me when I saw that going across social media and listened to that snippet of the podcast to learn more about it. But I mean, obviously he didn't sign it, and so that's why it never got out. He never agreed to anything. He declined it, and then ended up signing actually for less in Vancouver than what the Red Wings were offering. But it does kind of make you wonder about like that sort of alternative history, or the what if Luongo had signed with the Red Wings that summer. Obviously, there would be the compensation going back to Vancouver for him, but aside from that, like what's the impact on the rest of the team? It probably means no Hasek round 2 for the Red Wings since Chris Osgood was still there. What about the impact on the rest of the salary cap? Like back then, it's crazy to think about the salary cap ceiling was only $44 million for that season. And if Luongo ultimately signed for 4 years and $6.75 million, he would have taken up a significant amount of the Red Wings cap, which it's, given such a low cap back then, and for a contract that paid Luongo $6.75 million, that's equivalent to 13.3 million in today's salary cap. So it really is like one of those great like what ifs, like in history, right? Would the Red Wings have won the Stanley Cup in 2008? Would they have won maybe in 2007 when they went to the Western Conference Finals and lost to Anaheim? Excuse me. Would they have won multiple Stanley Cups during that time? Like, what like larger impact would have had it on the team structure if so much money was committed to your starting goalie? I don't have the answers, obviously. That would be a fun, just tangent imagination journey for us to go on in sometime in the future. But yeah, totally a surprise that Ken Holland pulled out the old offer sheet for Roberto Luongo back in the day.
We could play what if so much with this team. I mean, when you think about it, think what if Philip Zadina hadn't been drafted, and there was Quinn Hughes or Evan Bouchard. That's the one that haunts me the most. That's just the one I always think about. But that's my 2 cents on that. If you play the what if game, you can beat yourself dead with it, because there's so many things you can look back on and say. But I think I'm at the point where I don't want to even play that game back then because of the success that team had. I think I'm pretty good with how things ended up with those teams during that time.
Ultimately, I'm with you, Evan. I think things played out pretty well. They went to the Western Conference Final that year, and then followed it up with 2 runs to the final, including the Cup in 2008. I guess the 2 things that stand out to me of that alternate reality is that 2006-2007 season. They probably don't trade for Todd Bertuzzi that year because they don't have the cap to go get him. but it would be kind of fun because just I don't know that Luongo wasn't a Canuck yet, but he was going to be, and obviously Bertuzzi was a Canuck, and there's just they're going to get a Canuck one way or another. But Todd Bertuzzi's probably not a Red Wing, and maybe that means he doesn't sign with the Red Wings down the road. The other train of thought I have with that is Luongo signed for 4 years, right? That takes him to the 2010, 2011 season or 2000, yeah.
Yep.
And that means that Jimmy Howard is getting mentored by Roberto Luongo. What does that look like? That's a fun rabbit hole to kind of go down. Maybe Jimmy Howard doesn't ever become the Red Wings starting goaltender because they have Roberto Luongo and they just kind of ride him forever. But I guess best case scenario for Jimmy Howard there is that he has a heck of a mentor. But crazy kind of rabbit hole to fall down. It's one of those things that like I'm sure a lot of kids back in 2006 were on their NHL 6 video games were signing Luongo to the Red Wings. Meanwhile, they were actually trying to do it.
I remember I signed J.S. Jaguar that summer or like that on that game. I just didn't think I didn't think Hasek was going to join them, but like I just didn't think that Osgood was the guy. But I mean, pretty wild to think. And like, we're going to go down this rabbit hole for a second longer. Like Roberto Luongo mentors Jimmy Howard, but Luongo still has a long future or bright future ahead of him, a long, tenure ahead of him. What does that mean for Howard? Like, he's the backup, but like, he's a good backup. Do the Red Wings trade him for other assets? And it's like this whole like universe just expands, like Marvel Cinematic Universe, multiverse. Like it's, I don't know. We could spend a lot of time on this and a lot of time on other what if topics, and maybe we'll end up doing that this summer. Let's be honest.
Drive ourselves crazy, man. You just could drive yourself crazy with all the what ifs.
Yeah, you really can. I just wanted to paint the picture because I remember this one because I'm old. But when the Red Wings were really desperate to look for a goaltender to help Osgood, I should say, because they were looking at. I remember the names were Martin Gerber, who ended up signing with the Carolina Hurricanes. The Jaguar, for real, they were actually looking at him. And it was Evgeny Nabokov, who stayed with the Sharks. And they actually brought Eddie Belfour down to Joe Louis Arena. There are pictures from the Free Press of Eddie Belfour coming in with Jimmy Devellano to have an interview with Ken Holland. They thought that he was that good a fit. So it could have been Crazy Eddie's team. That's entirely possible. So I'm not surprised that Luongo was offer sheeted, and things did work out. Obviously you go to the 2007 conference final with Hasek. You go to the Cup final in 2008 and 2009. You win a Stanley Cup with Osgood. It would have been fascinating if Luongo joined the cause, but you end up getting Hasek 2.0 for a couple years. You get Conklin behind Osgood, and then Jimmy Howard sort of graduates and becomes the goaltender. That's the story of how it really happened. And that's the beautiful thing about the past, is that you can look back on it and change it in an infinite number of ways and make 25 movies out of it if you're Marvel. But you can't go back and change it anymore, which is perhaps for the best.
Well, guys, I've been sitting here for a while now, and I have this Anchorman-sized burrito sitting next to me that I just can't wait to devour. But we're going to wrap it up here, but we got some breaking news here real quick that we like to announce. Our boy Devin, he's all grown up, and he got engaged this week. So congratulations, Devin. We're excited for you. Bachelor party road trip to Florida. We're all in. Georgia's going to get his homeless buddy, and we're all going to take a car down there and do it up there. So, but no, seriously, on a serious note, congratulations, man. It's an exciting time.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Very, very excited. Very hectic time right now.
Dang, Devin, congrats. I feel like I need to follow you on Facebook or Instagram or something, because I totally missed that. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed our episode today. Reminder, jersey giveaway. We discreetly mentioned a former Red Wing, and admittedly, the rabbit hole we went down mentioning a whole bunch of other former Red Wings, that wasn't planned. So it is not Todd Bertuzzi. It is not Jimmy Howard. It is not Dominik Hasek. It's not Chris Osgood. And it's not Philip Zadina. So if you say it's those players, that's not it. But the first person who does find the Easter egg, you're going to win a free jersey of your choice. So happy hunting.
It's definitely not Bob Airy, too, if you listen to last week's episode. So we won't be doing that either. Guys, my burrito's getting cold. So I think it's time we got to wrap this show up. But once again, let me remind you where to find us. You can find us on YouTube at The Flying Octopod, also on Twitter and Threads at Flying Octopod. And you can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Guys, looking forward to this West Coast trip. Hopefully the Red Wings can get those 4 points that Tony was talking about earlier and get things back on track. So, guys, once again, thank you for being here. And thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll be back next week. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to the Flying Octopus Podcast. Follow us on YouTube at the Flying Octopus Channel and Twitter at Flying Octopod.